What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to this channel, we speak about mental health through pop culture and introduce a couple cool films along the way. My name's Captain Nostalgia. I'm a writer, podcaster, and the director of our film festival, Horrific Hope. First festival of its kind to be horror-centric and mental health focused. If you guys would like more information as to how to submit, more information about our sponsors, all of those links are in the show notes below. And shout out to our sponsors, Diabolical DVD, Fierce Literature, and Convicted Printing. Today we're going to be traveling to the country of Indonesia to talk about Death Note. If you guys are curious about this movie and want to check it out for yourselves, this will be hitting digital DVD and Blu-ray this Tuesday, January 17th. This movie tells the story of a brother and sister who, following the death of their mother, end up going back to this small village where she lived and kind of taking over and in the process of the aftermath of her death, ancient evil ends up being unleashed. Before I jump into the crux of this film and kind of my general thoughts on this film, I do want to put a trigger warning because we are a channel specifically dedicated to talking about mental health and suicide prevention. This film does deal very heavily with suicide. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but these suicides, they're not just talked about, they are actually seen. And so if you guys are interested in this, do know that if you have ever struggled or ever lost anyone, this film could be triggering. Now let's talk about this movie now. I feel like this movie has something across the board. Perhaps what I like and respect so much about this is that it feels like it's really intimate and you're getting to grieve with these characters in a way that you don't really see a lot in horror movies. I think really what works really well is how the drama and the horror actually run parallel with one another. You never kind of feel like you're getting too much drama, but you never feel like you're getting too much horror either. The horror is very subtle for the first two acts of this movie until it actually does dive really deep into the horror aspect. I think thematically, when you're dealing with not only suicide, but also the exploration of how that suicide is impacting other characters, you really need to allow this time to breathe because of, again, how many people are affected by suicide in reality. And to have a character and story explore that very subject, again, you need to allow that narrative to breathe, and this one breathes very beautifully. You can feel the love and the care that the filmmakers had while making this movie. It's very evident in the film, and I feel like sometimes stories like this that are dealing with really heavy topics like suicide and depression, but also how something like that can also be generational. It's a fascinating character study, and getting to see the siblings and kind of how the relationship with their mother is affected in this, it works really well. And it should go without saying that this movie is beautifully written, it's beautifully shot, everything about this movie is just absolutely simply stunning. If there's anything this movie does well, is that it keeps the level of quality literally across the board. The acting in this is top notch. It's exceptional. It's honestly probably some of the best acting I've ever seen in a foreign film, and I really fell in love with these characters, and they feel really developed, and their world feels really lived in. And I think that the brother and sister actor and actress in this just have amazing and immaculate chemistry. I think even the comic relief in this for the brother-in-law character, he's really well played. I think he allows the comedy with his character kind of offset some of the more heavier moments, and again, it just balances really well. When you're talking about the horror aspect of this movie, I would definitely kind of compare this to like elements of Evil Dead meets Smile, and I think that it works in really creepy aesthetic, and then I would even kind of throw in some of Rob Zombie's Lords of Salem into this as well. Like, it kind of just takes a little bit of like the best of all of these projects and then just marries them together with this really compelling drama. Needless to say that, like, by the time that the credits were rolling, like, I didn't want this to end, and I felt like the pacing of this movie is just absolutely perfect. I never felt like the character study like of aspect of this ever went like too long, or it dragged, or it lagged. And then I felt like once you kind of got into the horror aspects of it, I wanted more. And so I felt like they gave me just enough to really wet my whistle. But as the film kept going and you got more of it and it became more and more predominant, it worked really well. I feel like I've been saying the same thing literally since this video began. This movie's incredible. I really had a good time with it. You can pick up Death Knot for yourself when it hits DVD, Blu-ray, and digital beginning January 17th. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 4 out of 5. I think across the board, everything about this movie is just worth at least worth one watch. The acting, the writing, the narrative, social commentary, the horror aspect, everything about this movie just works on so many levels. And yeah, the only thing that when we're talking about a DVD, and here on this channel, when we're talking about the release of like an upcoming release of a physical media, we do talk about the special features. And while I do love this film, I will say that the special features on this are really lacking because, well, as you can see, there is absolutely none here. The only thing you have here is trailers, and sometimes that happens with international releases, so I'm going to go ahead and give this one quite a low score and say that it is a 1 out of 5. If you guys would recommend I would recommend checking this out, but going the digital route versus the also instead of the physical route, unless you're like me and like physical media. Let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to this channel, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health of the film of which we're reviewing in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health, if only for just a few moments. So there's a scene in particular in this movie, and this movie deals so much with a lot of like the survivor guilt journey of an individual after losing a loved one to suicide. And I really appreciate that because, as I've said on this channel and the podcast network 100 times, the reason that I got into mental health advocacy is because I lost someone to suicide. I've gone through depression myself, and I feel like this movie just captures that journey incredibly well. And it's kind of terrifying how correct it gets. The moment in particular that I want to address comes from the brother-in-law character and the brother character. The brother's kind of talking about feeling guilty about the fact that his mother took her own life. The brother-in-law basically says, you couldn't really have known that she was planning on doing that. And for someone that's lost someone to suicide, you just constantly, your brain is just on a constant loop of every interaction, every conversation, combing through evidence of depression, combing of evidence of saying, what could I have said differently? What could I have done differently? And a lot of it, I think, comes down from also education. Because those of us that are depressed, as I've been depressed in the past and have also wanted to end my life at different points in my life, one of the things that is really easy to hide it, if you know how to hide it, is the fact that, well, you don't want to live anymore. It's a really sad truth, but those of us that have gone through depression and also contemplated suicide, we've dealt with self-harm, you get really good at masking those things. And so you have the brother-in-law character saying you couldn't have possibly known or been prepared for the loss of a family member in such a manner. And I feel like, honestly, some of the survivor's guilt journey of losing someone to suicide is also finding people that have been where you've been. Every November, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention does what they call Survivors Day, which is a great resource to connect with other people, not only in your area, but also online, that have actually experienced and have gone through those exact things, losing someone to suicide. It's a stark reminder that we're not alone. That's part of the reason that we started Victims and Villains, was that I lost someone to suicide. I went through my fair share of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, and I just didn't want to have other people go through what I wanted to, right? That I wanted to remind those that were going through that they're not alone, and that help is possible. And I will also push against what the brother-in-law says in this particular scene, and actually say that in the moment, you don't really know. And I think a lot of it also comes down to the fact that there is a lack of education in how to train people for understanding the signs of depression, understanding the signs of suicide, understanding the signs of addiction or self-harm, and that list just goes on and on and on. But we have the World Wide Web now available right within our pockets, and so there are resources out there, and there's a vast entire wealth of knowledge out there on how to better understand and better spot and better even communicate with someone that you think might be going through it. To bring it back to American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they had launched a website a few years ago called Seize the Awkward, which basically walks people through how to address mental health topics and mental health issues with friends and loved ones because, well, they care. And also down below, you'll see a button that says share, and you can share them. You can share with someone all of our content to just remind people that they're not alone. In the links below, we have a mental health resource library. You can share that as well. We have a plethora of podcasts that in the past that have been not only talking about entertainment, but also we've done episodes on postpartum depression, trauma, and how trauma affects your mental health, and the need for why therapy is a great resource to deconstructing that trauma. We've also done episodes on how alcoholism and affects your mental health and relationships. We've done several topics that aren't exclusively entertainment. And sometimes it's just about reminding people that they're not alone. And from someone that's lost someone to suicide, that means a lot. Not only from someone that is going through suicide or considering suicide right now, but also at the same time, someone that has been on the receiving end of what it feels like to lose someone to suicide. So if you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, or you've lost someone recently to suicide, consider the links in the show notes below. Check out our mental health resource library. If you just need someone to talk to, DM us on one of our social medias. We would love to just be a listening ear for you. I really hope this was an encouragement to any of you guys watching this that are currently going through this. And again, just doing this to remind you guys that you have value and that you have worth. Death Knot is going to be out on physical and digital media platforms beginning January 17th from Well Good Entertainment. Check it out. Have a good night, guys.